I'm delighted to be here. I'm a Melbourne boy. I didn't grow up here because my dad moved to Sydney and Newcastle, but I was born in Melbourne at Brighton. So it's a long journey for me around the world, and then to come back here. I think it's probably 10 or 12 years since I've been here in Melbourne. I think it was, forget the name of the church, starting with a W, Waitangi or something like that. Anyway, we're very happy to be here, and I'm sorry we're a little bit late. My plane was on time, but the baggage was late, and then I was standing sideways, so my pickup didn't see me. We've tried to choose a number of topics this afternoon that will be of interest to you, and it's difficult for a professor who's used to a 1-hour lecture to be constrained to 30 or 40 minutes and then have questions. A lot of students today don't have questions, they just exit the room and go to the next class. But I know you all have lots of questions, and we'll try to make it so that today is meaningful to you. And I just didn't come here with they say an expert is somebody from out of town that has 4 PowerPoints. So I guess I'm an expert by that definition. But I'll try not to just ram it down your throat as if this is what you should know. We'll use certain topics as a medium for our discussion. But our first topic this afternoon is all about fats. Fats are very important, and these are just some terms here that we'll be talking about: hydrogenated fats, omega-3 trans fats, poly and monounsaturated fats, saturated fats, and the tropical fats. These are all different in their behaviour in the body. Some of these are good and some of them we want to avoid. So I realise some of you have taken college nutrition classes, and others have taken advanced courses with Sibylla and probably know what all of these things mean. So I'm going to try to make a mix and give the sheep something to nibble on, and hopefully something for the giraffes to stretch their neck and reach. So hopefully all of you can leave here feeling like you learned something. First of all, fat has really been given a bad press, and we want to get into our head straight away that fat is important and necessary. It isn't something we should shun. Many things in life are important and essential, but if we go overboard, like salt, you need some salt. Sugar is important. It's in our diets, in our peaches, our carrots, our lima beans, and so many other things. But of course, if you do it, okay, that's good, great. If you do it to excess, of course, there are problems. High in saturated fat and bakery products, not that you make in your house because you can control the fat that you use, but the ones you buy in the store, they often have hydrogenated oil, which means saturated fat is high. The other fat, of course, is the trans, and these are derived basically from hydrogenation of your vegetable oils. Vegetable oils have no trans fat in them at all. Trans fat only comes from commercial hydrogenation or from bacterial action in the stomach of a cow. And so milk has a small amount of trans fat, and all the hydrogenated fats and the bakery products, donuts and fries and Danish pastries and all those things, we'll probably see in a little bit. So those are the bad ones. The other ones listed there are the good guys. Now this is what I have suggested. You won't see this in any book other than my textbook. You won't find it in any literature at all because there aren't any clear designations, but you can see here the approximate profile of fat. Saturated fat should be 6-7% or less. Monounsaturated, and I don't say zero because of what I said earlier. There's just Every vegetable oil that you can tell me, every nut that you can tell me, every seed that you can tell me, every legume you can tell me, there's not going to be zero saturated fat. It's going to have some saturated fat, so that's why I don't have 0 to 7, because it's very hard to get below 5. Monounsaturated fat is the one that we have at the highest level, and polyunsaturated fat you can see about the same as saturated fat. Trans, we do say 0. If you add that up, you get about 20 to 25. Typically, the Australian intake is about 30 to 35%, I believe. So we're looking at, yes, about 1/3 less fat than what we're used to eating is the more ideal sort of thing. And then, of course, we want to recognise that the polyunsaturated fat, there's 2 types. There's omega-6 and omega-3, and they have very different biological effects. They come from different sources, and we must be careful that we don't swamp the body with only the 6s and forget the 3s. I know 6s are more exciting when it goes over the boundary and it's rah, 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 but 3s also can win matches. And 3s are important because they have significant biological effect. Saturated fat, of course, raises cholesterol and increases blood clots. Both of these are negatives. And we remember that for every 1% reduction in blood cholesterol, there's a 2% reduction in risk of heart disease. So clearly lowering your saturated fat is going to have a direct impact on your risk of heart disease. And of course the famous 7-country study which compared Finland and Holland versus the southern countries, Greece and then Yugoslavia, when this was done back in the 60s. And now of course it's splintered in about 5 different countries. But Southern European, Greece, Italy and so forth, you can see the vastly different coronary heart disease risk is high in the northern parts of Europe. It's low in southern Europe. The amount of fat that was consumed is not a lot of difference, but if you look at the saturated fat, that's where the difference is. You can see the southern European is eating very little saturated fat. And why? What are they eating? Olive oil. What are the Finnish and the Dutch eating? Cheese, milk and meats, okay? And so the serum cholesterol numbers you see over there. The southern Europeans have nice cholesterol levels and the northern Europeans have elevated cholesterol levels. So this was a landmark study that you know about 50 years ago, and it's still true today. It's the saturated fat which is the major problem in our diet. Trans fat is worse because it raises your bad cholesterol and lowers your good cholesterol. However, the amount of trans fat in the diet is small compared to the amount of saturated fat in the Australian diet. Well, I'm sure we're familiar with the desirable levels for cholesterol and LDL. So we should know what these are. It's important for all of us. Don't just go to the doctor and let the doctor tell you your cholesterol's okay. You've paid either through some system or you're paying for the blood test or whatever. So you should have the number. You should track the number yourself. You should manage your health. This is very important. The people who are happiest and who live the longest, you're familiar with the Blue Zone studies that's come out in the last few years. The people who manage their health, who know what their health condition is and take personal responsibility for it, are going to have better health than somebody who just totally throws themselves in the hands of healthcare professionals. They're looking after you, but you're the ones who are choosing things on a daily basis. So it's important for you to have responsibility for it. Now the sources of saturated fat we've mentioned, the hydrogenated fats and the dairy products, cheese and eggs and so forth. And of course we need to watch out for cheese. A lot of people go off meat, they think cheese is the answer. But even the low-fat cheeses are still high in saturated fat. So just remember, you know, the Mediterranean diet is not floating in cheese. Ancel Keys, when he described it years ago in his landmark study, he described the Mediterranean diet as endless variety, macaroni and pasta and fresh bread and fresh fruit and lots of greens. And the macaroni and and legumes with a sprinkle of cheese, okay? A sprinkle. And a sprinkle is not so that everything's floating, okay? So if you're using cheese, you use it discriminately. As I said before, there's a double whammy from trans fat, pushes your good cholesterol down and your bad cholesterol up. And where do you find them? Well, in all the things you buy in the store that you don't make yourself. Hopefully when you make things yourself, you use a soy oil or a corn oil or an olive oil or whatever oil you're using, and rather than hydrogenated fat. So your bakery products are bad news. Donuts and fries are probably at the top of the list. There's always a question about butter versus margarine. People say that butter is more natural because it comes from a cow, whereas margarine is processed by industry, and so they add all things to it, and it's just a mixture of chemicals, okay? So because I heard this, I decided to do a chemical analysis, and just to help you compare the two, and I don't have any shares in the margarine industry. I don't use either of these. But you can see saturated fat, there's a vast difference. Your trans fat, butter has a little bit, margarine has none or has more than butter, depending on what you buy. When you look at the label, what are you looking for as the first ingredient? Huh? You're looking for hydrogenated if you don't want it, but if you're wanting to keep it in your trolley, what are you looking for? I'm looking for the word liquid. Liquid oil or liquid vegetable oil or whatever. Maybe it's said differently, it probably is by your reluctance to speak, but we're not wanting to see the word hydrogenated, because once you see that word, that immediately raises a red flag. You want your first ingredient to be olive oil or corn oil or soy oil or something that's liquid. And it depends on how you buy it. If you buy it as a stick versus in a tub, what does that tell you? The one that's in the tub is going to be more with saturated and trans fat, right? So just the look of the thing. Of course, today we have, it may be coming later, today we have special margarines for those who have cardiac problems. You're all familiar with these that have 8% phytosterols or plant sterols in them. You've seen these margarines? What's the name of one of them? Is it Pulse? Is Pulse one? Huh? It's not one? I saw them in Sydney, but I'm getting old, I can't remember, but I know it has a short name. It's a... Logic? Okay. I don't know where they come up with these names, but... Now these are special... You pay like $2 or $3 extra for them, and they have phytosterols. Well, don't be frightened by that word. This is a cholesterol-like material, but it's from plants, it's from nuts and from legumes, and it actually blocks cholesterol. So it will help keep your cholesterol. In fact, using a serving or two of these every day can lower your cholesterol 10%. Okay, there's a question?
What is that?
Excuse me?
Second last one. From second last one.
Phytosterols?
Yes.
These are plant sterols. Phyto is the word for plant, so these are plant sterols. That's what you have written on your margarine. 8% plant sterols, okay? And you can see butter has nothing and the margarine has these naturally, but what I'm saying is you can now buy margarines where they are fortified, where this is actually added to them. So when you look at the list here, it's very clear that saturated and trans is much higher. The bad fat is much higher in the butter, and of course it has cholesterol and it doesn't have much vitamin E and antioxidant or the phytosterol. So when you look at it from this standpoint, which comes out looking better. Oh, but it has diglycerides. Well, that's just an emulsifier they get out of soybean. Oh, it has carotene. Well, they get that from carrots. So, you know, all these noises and hubbub and everything that people try to make out, you know, margarine's not as bad as it's made out to be. And I'm not here to promote it, but I'm just showing you that the animal product, butter, really in terms of antioxidants, in terms of plant sterols and the type of fat, really falls a long way short of margarine. So here we have, these are the ones we have in America, Benecol, Smart Balance and so forth. Now what about coconut? Okay, there's a lot of talk today about coconut. It's a saturated fat, but of course it's different. It has a lot of short chain and medium chain fats. So it's got to be handled differently by the body. It's absorbed directly from the stomach. A lot of the fatty acids, not all of them, but some of them. And because it's short chain fatty acids, supposed to be, or medium chain, it's supposed to be better. Now, in the book by Dr. Fife, he makes some of these claims, these bullets you can see here. It doesn't raise your cholesterol or cause blood clots or helps with diabetes and has fewer calories. It's supposed to have only about 6.5 calories per gram, whereas most fat has 9. Wow. Okay. It helps with weight loss, and it has all these antimicrobial properties. This is the claim that's made in the book. It's all over the web. Everywhere I go, people are asking me about, you know, how good is coconut fat. So you've got it all, different products that's available. Does it really protect us against the chronic diseases? Here's Fife's book. Well, you may not see it because it's a little faint there, but those sitting in the front, they have the $50 seats. Those back there are in the bleachers. They don't see too well. But these are the fatty acids that are there, and the three that are in lavender, purple, whatever colour, these are the major saturated fats, which add up to 70% of the fat, saturated fat, and myristic and palmitic are the major atherogenic, and lauric is not far behind. These are the atherogenic, the ones that cause elevated cholesterol. So how we could claim that coconut lowers your cholesterol when more than a half of the fat is atherogenic saturated fat is beyond my comprehension. Just, I can't fathom the claim. Studies also with various types of monkeys which simulate human metabolism have found that when you compare coconut oil with corn oil, the coconut will raise cholesterol, will raise your bad cholesterol, will raise triglycerides. Okay? So it's not only looking at the chemical composition, but also feeding it to primates that physiologically are like human beings. So it doesn't jive, okay? Blood clots tended to increase with the coconut compared to the corn. It doesn't jive with the claims. Coconut oil is rich in medium chain fats, but it does raise cholesterol, it does increase the risk of blood clots, and it has similar calories to other fats. You see here that corn oil is a little less than 9, that's common. It's not, 9 is just a rough figure, just like 4 calories for carbohydrates per gram. It's not exactly 4.00, it's a rough figure. Coconut has a little less. It's true, it does have a little less. It's 8.36, but it's not 6.8 as claimed by Fife. And it doesn't promote weight loss. Going on coconut oil isn't some magic thing that in 3 months you can lose 20 kilo. There's no peer-reviewed data to show this happens. So, I guess in summary I would say that coconut fat and all the joy and thrill about the data that's promoted about it is just all hypothetical, mythical, whatever you want to call it. And does that mean, I mean that will perhaps will lead to the question, well, does that mean I shouldn't use coconut? No. No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I mean, coconut's a good flavouring agent, isn't it? A wonderful flavour to various desserts and pies and what have you. So we're not saying you can't eat it, but when you're eating lots of it, in addition to other saturated fat foods, then it's not good. Okay? Now, you're all familiar with omega-6 lowering cholesterol, and you know where it comes from, the vegetable oils, grains and legumes. But the omega-3 is probably less well known, and it's valuable because it does reduce blood clots. There's biochemical explanation for how it works. It does it preferentially against the omega-6, and it also reduces arrhythmias, and it's the major non-pharmacological method for lowering triglycerides. If you have high triglycerides, then taking a tablespoon of flax oil a day is probably one of the best things you can do, because omega-3 is great for reducing triglycerides. And it has anti-inflammatory action. It does protect against cancer, which we're not sure that omega-6 can do that because of its more pro-inflammatory reaction. So you don't want to overdo the 6s at the expense of the 3s. Now, just to remind you of some of the foods where you can get omega-3, soy, of course, is a good source. Your flax is an excellent source. Canola is also a reasonable source. Walnuts. Chia is top of the list. It's 64% omega-3 versus flax, which is 55%. So you can see it's better than flax. You see the list here. A teaspoon of chia seed oil is almost 3 grams. We need about 1.5 grams a day. So a teaspoon of chia seed oil is going to give us probably twice what we need, although we don't really know how much we need. That the requirement isn't fully established. But you can see the list there. Even some other nuts, pecans, for example, and some of your green vegetables. I don't know if you know that the fat that is in your green vegetables is largely omega-3. Now, it's true, there's not a whole lot of fat in green vegetables, but the amount of fat that's there is mostly omega-3. So eating lots of green vegetables is another way of tipping the balance of the polys towards more omega-3 and less omega-6. And this is the recommendation, that the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 should be in the vicinity of 4 to 1 or 5 to 1. And typically, I would assume that if Australians are similar to Americans, your ratio is like 10 to 1 or 12 to 1, or some cases even 15 to 1. So we need to restrain ourselves from using too much of the corn, sunflower seed oil, and use a little bit more of ones that have omega-3 in them, and maybe even use olive oil, which doesn't have significant amount of either of the omega-6 or omega-3, so it doesn't really enter too much in the equation. And then we come to the mono, which we said is the more supreme fat, and it lowers your bad cholesterol, your LDL cholesterol, but not as significantly as the omega-6. It only does it about 1/2 as much. The mono only is about half as effective at lowering your cholesterol. Okay, but it does slightly raise your HDL. The polys sometimes do lower your HDL. And the mono, like the omega-3, has been shown to protect against cancer. So these are all positive things. And the major sources, perhaps, of monounsaturated fat, you can see here your olive products, avocados, nuts, and canola oil is also significant. Now, I realise that in Australia there's a lot of talk about age-related macular degeneration. I haven't seen the data, it's hard to get, but I know there is some concern. If you're worried about canola oil, you can live without it. You can cook without it, you can eat. There's lots of other different things on the market. Australia is, I was looking in the store on Friday, and the number of oils you have far outpaces what we have. You have rice bran oil, you have avocado oil, almond oil, you have macadamia oil. You have so many oils if you want to be using oils for making salad or for cooking, whatever. So, you know, if you have a problem with one that you're doubtful about, don't worry about it, just leave it alone. Nuts, of course, are very valuable in our diet. You can see Brazil nuts and cashews, and I think macadamias also have high levels of saturated fat, but the predominant fat is monounsaturated fat, with the exception of walnuts and sunflower seeds. I don't have sunflower seeds listed here, but macadamia, you can see 82% monounsaturated fat. So all the nuts are loaded with a very healthy type of fat. And some people say, yeah, but they're so high in calories. But whoever argues that a baked potato is high in calories, or a muffin or a bagel, and yet they have more in one serving than you do in 30 grams, an ounce or 30 grams of nuts. So we tend to have historical concepts that really we need to get rid of. Nuts certainly are high in fat, but the caloric value of the normal serving doesn't come close to a lot of the other foods that are commonly eaten. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the 4 major human population studies which show the risk of heart disease. 0 is up here, and you see all these coloured lines are coming down. These are studies done over the last 20 years, including the one at Loma Linda, and you can see that the risk of heart disease decreases 30, 40, 50%. So in the old days when doctors would say, you know, go easy on nuts, not good for your heart, it's not true. The data shows that regular use of nuts actually protects. And this was a recent publication, 2006, which combined a lot of the studies, and they showed that eating nuts more than 4 times a week, you know, a typical serving, whatever you're comfortable with. I'm not talking about a huge bag or just 1 or 2, but, you know, a normal hand size. Eating nuts 4 times a week will reduce your risk of heart disease about 40%. I mean, 40% is nothing to sniff at. That's a highly significant number in population studies. And for every serving of nuts that you add to your diet, you're reducing your risk over 8%. Okay, so that's moving in the right direction. And then this is a study looking at different nuts, and this is your LDL reduction. The previous study was looking at risk of heart disease. Now we're looking at lowering of your bad cholesterol, the LDL. And again, all the bars are going down, which means it's a reduction. And you can see the different studies, different years. I mean, this is an older slide, there's more recent studies, but you know, I usually ask, okay, so what is the best nut? Which nut should you be eating? Okay? We're a little shy today, aren't we? You know, I hear people at the Melbourne cricket ground reacting a little bit more violently and vocally than what I hear here. Are you not passionate about pistachios? It's your favourite, is it? Your almonds is yours. Yeah, you've got the message. Whatever nut you like, go eat it. Go to the store and buy it and eat it, because they're all good. And you don't get too carried away by, you know, whether one bar is longer than another, because all the human population groups, they're not all the same. They're different. You know, some of them are young, some of them middle-aged, some of them were hypercholesteremic, and some of them had normal cholesterol. So we're not comparing apples and apples. We're comparing pears and apples and mangoes and avocado, you know. So the main point is all the nuts work. They all lower your cholesterol. So whatever you like and you can afford, do me a favour and go get some and eat it. And one of Yeah.
Doctors say that people who have diabetes too should not eat nuts.
Okay, well,
What do we say about that?
we'll come to that. You looked ahead in my notes. Okay, so phytosterols, we already learnt that this word plant sterols, these are plant mocks of cholesterol that do us good. You can see they're all loaded there. Sunflower seed I couldn't even put on this graph because it's through the roof. So lots of good phytochemicals and other things. So here's the story you asked. What about nuts and diabetes? The risk of diabetes by eating nuts 1 to 4 times a week, 5 or more times a week, or even peanut butter. You know, you used to be in last century, you could tell an Adventist by the smell of peanut butter on their breath. And then peanut butter kind of went into getting bad press and people weren't sure if it was good. And, you know, it's mixed with hydrogenated fat and sugar and salt and all these other things. So is it really safe? Well, if you use natural, and of course the word natural can be deceptive, as I've learnt recently, you have to read the label carefully. And if you forget everything else today, you know, these 3 words are something you must not forget as nutrition educators to teach the people back in the churches, and that is read, not read my lips, read the labels, because products change. Almond milk in America is fortified identical to soy milk. There's no difference. One is made from almonds, one from soy. But you read the label and you see that nutritionally they're identical, except for the isoflavones. Here I learned that almond milk is not fortified. So, you know, you have to keep reading because one of these days somebody's going to wake up and fortify it. And so you want to know that if you want to switch. But any product, things are changing all the time, so you have to read the labels. So if you buy peanut butter that's just made from peanuts, you can see, even though peanuts are a legume, it behaves like a nut in protecting you against type 2 diabetes. Okay? So what are the recommendations? We want to limit saturated fat, and you know how to do that. You want to get rid of all trans fat. There's no reason for trans fat in the diet. Just get rid of it. Use bakery products that are made from non-hydrogenated oils. Okay? You want to use polyunsaturated fat modestly, carefully. You want to promote the prominent oil should be a monounsaturated base like olive oil. Olives, nuts, avocado, canola are rich in the monos. Nuts lower your LDL and lower your risk of coronary heart disease. And ideally, you want to get about 20 to 25% of your calories from fat, which means eating a little less than you are now. So just to conclude, I just want to remind you again, we've been talking about fat, and whenever you talk about fat, you always talk about heart disease. So I just want to remind you, and of course, cholesterol is not the only thing for heart disease. There's arrhythmia, there's blood clots, there's all kinds of things that are triggers, but typically nutritionists talk mostly about cholesterol, and you can see here the things that mainly are involved with lowering cholesterol, and top of the list is unsaturated fat, both mono and poly. But don't forget all the other things that are also useful. These should be added in regularly into our diet. Soluble fibre, where do we get that? We get it from certain grains, barley and oats. We get it from most fruits and vegetables, except the leafy ones don't have so much. And we also get it from carrots and squash. Okay, vegetarian diets generally, because of the phytochemicals that are there. We'll talk about that a little bit later. The soy protein, which can lower your cholesterol 5% or more. We'll talk a little bit later about soy, and you're probably interested in the latest data on soy sabotage and whether soy has survived or whether we're putting it in a coffin. Nuts, of course, and please don't forget exercise. I am a strong proponent in exercise. Since I've been in Australia, I've probably hiked about 60 kilometres, and I plan to do that in the next week, keep walking. if you don't combine regular exercise with good eating, you're only providing a part of the benefit. You can't have good health while you're sedentary. You know, I make a very crude comment, and that is obesity is the cause of all illness, and exercise is the cure of all illness. Now, it's not true, but you get the message. Being overweight and sedentary and having too much body weight undergirds so many of the chronic diseases, and we can avoid many of them by walking, exercising. And we see here some of the things that it does. It helps us manage our weight better, it improves our stress, lowers your bad cholesterol, raises your good cholesterol, lowers your blood pressure, lowers your triglyceride, and on the story goes. I guess the other list of sleeping better and digesting better and so many other things. It's like 20 things that regular exercise will do. And all I can say is, buy yourself a pair of tennis shoes and go do it. We're reluctant, we're so pressed for time that we make all kinds of excuses, and I'm included in that. We just have to find ways to get more exercise. It's like Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay, the famous world boxer. He lived just down the street from where I used to live. And he came up to Andrews one time, and he was promoting some product that he gives away to poor Haitians and so forth, millions of dollars worth of giveaways. Anyway, he came up, and I won't get into all the story, but I was thinking one day about him, and I was thinking, you know, boxers wouldn't last long if they went into the ring with one glove and the other hand was tied behind their back. They'd walk in and like 1, 2, 3, they'd be out to it, wouldn't they? Couldn't last. And yet that's how many people are living today, right? They think that if they can be careful about their diet and watch what they're eating and everything, they've got it made. But if exercise is tied behind their back, sooner or later they're going to trip up. So we have to fight life with offense and defense. We need to eat well as well as, I mean, there's other factors, but certainly eating and good eating and balanced exercise on a regular basis are crucial to maintain a healthy lifestyle.